Okay, so this is part two. This is a quick one on the manual muscle testing. Getting into the grades. Keep reviewing those grades of manual muscle testing. Let's start with number 5. Number 5 is normal. Everybody in this room pretty much probably has normal movement for most of their extremities. You can go all the way up, get close to that full motion, and you're doing this against gravity. Talked about that in the lab, against gravity. Also, when you start pushing, if you do a manual muscle test and you're pushing on that person, they can take maximum resistance. Again, that's something we do in the lab, show you what maximum resistance. You're kind of pushing as a therapist as hard as you can on their arm, and they hold it right up. They don't break, so they're considered normal. Of course, it's all relative. What's normal for an 80-year-old little old lady versus a 20-year-old muscle-bound guy is different. But normal is, able-bodied, no issues. For good, they're still pretty good, pretty functional, just still a little off. They can lift and move their joints fully against gravity. They can, again, lift their arm all the way up against gravity. And they can take resistance. They can take moderate resistance. You aren't pushing as hard as you can. You're pushing maybe like half of that, moderate resistance. And then when you try to go up to a maximum resistance, they break. What do I mean by break? Their arm gives way. So you're pushing and you're saying min, and there's a little bit moderate. They're doing okay, and you go to max, and boom, they break. They can't hold their arm up. They have some weakness there. There's an impairment there that may be a thing to focus on with your therapy, maybe an issue of concern. A little bit off on 4. 3, fair, they're okay, but they're significantly weak. They have full motion against gravity. They can, again, lift their arm up or whatever joint it is, fully against gravity. They really can't take any resistance at all. You start to push even just minimally, just a little bit, and they just break. Very, very weak. Full range in that joint. The joint is working well, but there's just no strength there. Strength is the big issue there. And then we get into these bottom 3 scales. This is when you're not pushing on the person. They can't even lift their arm, hand, or whatever it is, wrist, shoulder joint, fully against gravity. They can only go part of the way against gravity. The only way they can make it full range of motion is if you put them in a gravity minimized plane. And we're getting into what that means in the lab. In a gravity minimized plane, they can go all the way up, and then you put them against gravity and they can't go all the way up. Here's an example. Shoulder flexion. That's lifting your arm up, reaching as high as you can with your arm straight up. Your 3, 4, or 5, if you can go all the way up, depending on how much resistance you can take. But if you can't go all the way up, let's say you only go halfway, then you're a 2, you're poor. And then you put the person on their side if you want to see what they have for motion there, and you ask them to do it, and they can go all the way up, but they're on their side. It's gravity reduced plane, so it's deceptive. So they're a 2, they're not a 3, 4, or 5. 1, the trace, are even weaker. They have no active motion at all, without gravity minimized, but there's some muscle activity going on there. As we get at this palpation, you can feel the muscle contracting, feel it tightening a little bit, pulsing a little bit. So as you're rehabbing this person, say they had a stroke, you palpate that deltoid. It's like, oh, there's something going on there. Not strong enough yet to lift your arm up, but yes, it's getting stronger. We can do things to make that even stronger. There are trace. 0, this is nothing. There's no active motion. There's no muscle activity. It's totally paralyzed. Okay. How to perform manual muscle testing. This is kind of hard to do, verbally. You gotta need to see it to do it, but just to kind of walk you through it. The first thing you want to always ask, do you have any pain? Let us know if there's any discomfort at all with any of these motions, and this is something you're going to be graded on in the practicum. You need to ask the person, are you experiencing any pain? Do you have any discomfort? As we go through this manual muscle testing, let me know if any of these motions cause any pain at all. And then you're going to demonstrate, you're going to model it to the client, then you're going to ask them to perform the full motion, and you're going to watch how they do that motion. Is it a full, clean, smooth movement, or is it awkward? Is it jerky? Are they moving their body about? Do they have a real hard time doing it smoothly? Position the client so testing joint will be moved against gravity. Always test. If you're going to manual muscle test, you always want to do it against gravity. For the purposes of what we're doing in this class, always think manual muscle test against gravity. Ask the client to move extremity into position and hold, and you can say hold your arm right there, and the position is different for each joint. You'll see that in the videos. And you say, don't let me move your arm. You stabilize proximally. Consider the lever arm. What does that mean? You don't want to be way out too far, because the further out you're out, the harder, the more torque, the more strain it is on that shoulder joint. If you're a frail little old lady, you don't want to be way out, pushing further out. You want to be close, proximally, closer to the joint. Consider the degree of resistance they can tolerate. Muscles want to palpate. And then push in the opposite direction. If they're going to be lifting up, you're going to be pushing down. And then go from mid to mod to max. And stop. When there's a break, stop any pain and record the results. How to record results. And this is very important too when you're doing the practicum. You're going to get a sheet. You have to record it correctly. It's at scale. Are they a 5, 4, 3, 2, or 1? And it's all over 5. So let's say you do it, and they can lift their arm all the way up. You check their strength, and you push, mid, mod. You go to mod to max, and they break. You think, okay, there are 4, so there are 4 over 5 manual muscle testing, right shoulder flexion, AG, abbreviated for against gravity. Just a quick tip. You only need to really push on somebody. You're not going to be pushing on them and really doing manual muscle testing unless they can go all the way up against gravity. So they have to be a 3, 4, or 5 before you can even think about pushing. If they're a 2 or a 1, or 0, you're not going to be pushing. You're going to know pretty quickly what they are for a number. They only can go part of the way up. If they're a 2 out of 5, AG, you're done. Move on to the next one. And you'll see this more as we go through these scenarios in lab. Kind of walk through that a little bit. Okay, so that is the end